So I took the liberty of looking up our weather forecast since we're being joined by folks from 5 different provinces. I think the agreement is that today is a fairly rainy day, no matter where you are in Canada, with a sort of average 3 to 10 degree temperature range. So a perfect day to be sitting down with your cup of coffee and chatting with water utilities and chatting with other water tech SMEs. So I'm really, really delighted for all of you to join us today. And this is pretty much our perfect event size as well. We always aim for about 30 people for these events. We want them to be closed. We want them to feel intimate. We want everyone to have a chance to speak and to share a little bit about their work. And so this is fantastic to have that opportunity today. So my first request for everyone, if you're open to it, is please go ahead and rename yourself with your company name, just to make it a little bit easier to orient, especially as we get into, your name and company name. Of course, we don't just want to refer to you as your company, to make it a little bit easier to orient for questions and such. And we will get started. So my name is Alan Shapiro. I'm joining you today from Vancouver, which is traditional unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And as I mentioned, I think we've got folks from 5 provinces joining. So really excited to have this national group joining us for this matchmaking event. We've got a few quick introductions from our event partners, after which we've got 45 minutes for our panel of fantastic utilities today. And then we'll jump into our breakout sessions, which will really be the opportunity for some of our SMEs to speak to their own work, to chat directly with utilities, to chat directly with each other, and have an opportunity to connect. And then, as always with our matchmaking format, we'll be sharing our participant list after the fact, so don't worry about taking down people's information. We'll try to make that as easy as possible for you afterwards. A quick background note on Foresight. Foresight is Canada's clean tech accelerator, and most of you have worked with us in some capacity, whether that's through acceleration programs, whether that's through matchmaking programs like this, whether that is through investment and export-focused programming. So really working across the country to support SMEs in all shapes and sizes of clean tech. And so what that's meant most recently is launching ecosystem building initiatives, of which WaterNEXT is the first. And so again, most of you have emailed with me in some capacity in the past, and for those of you who are joining a WaterNEXT event for the first time, welcome. The goal of WaterNEXT is to be a pan-Canada water tech network that works across sectors and across applications, really just to support the innovation pipeline for all things water. And we again do that by supporting Foresight's accelerator program through matchmaking, strategic support programs, and a range of community building events. And so always eager to connect with folks in this room after this call. I don't know if Ching from IRAP is here yet, so perhaps while we give her a minute, I will hand it over to Rahim Kanji from Ontario Water Consortium, who's one of our event partners today, just to give a little bit of an introduction on OWC.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Rahim Kanji. I'm the Executive Director for Ontario Water Consortium. I think I know a few of you, but for those that I don't, Ontario Water Consortium, we're based in Waterloo, Ontario, and we work to basically enable water innovation in Ontario that addresses some of the big challenges and issues that are faced by end users. OWC was established in 2010, and since then, we just continue to be a platform through which companies, academia, end users, and governments connect and collaborate and share knowledge on their challenges, but also novel solutions and approaches. So just like Alan, happy to connect and speak with anyone after the event, and if you want to learn more or talk further.
Thanks, and we've been chatting with OWC for a while about collaborations, and so this is a great way for us to kick off what I hope will be a great partnership to support companies nationally.
For sure.
No pressure, Rahim. I don't see anyone from IRAP in the audience yet, so just a quick background on IRAP is a program of the National Research Council of Canada that provides advice, connections, and funding to support Canadian SMEs. And IRAP works very closely through their water technology team and through their ITA network, their network of technology advisors, again, with many of the companies that are in the room today, but also to support the water ecosystem. So we're really grateful to have them supporting a couple of our programs. And for those of you who aren't already working with IRAP in some capacity, we're very happy to help facilitate that introduction as well. They've got all shapes and sizes of supports for startups and SMEs. With that, I'm going to jump over to actually, I see that Ching from IRAP has just joined us. Ching, I did a little bit of an intro on IRAP. Did you want to jump in with any quick background before we hand it over to the panel? I think Ching is probably still joining us, and that is all right. So we'll give her a chance to speak at the end. And so we'll jump over to our panel, which I will be moderating today and hopefully speaking as little as possible to give each of our 4 utilities a chance to really outline some of the challenges that they're facing, some of the opportunities they see, and the ways in which they are working with SMEs. At least for this discussion, Q&A will be through the chat, so feel free, we'd love to get as many questions in as possible. So if you do have questions, throw those in the chat, and our utility speakers, in addition to me moderating those questions live, feel free to chime in the chat as well as you like. So we've got 4 amazing speakers joining us from 3 provinces. We've got Dave Unroe joining us from the town of Petawawa, bringing a strong background working across several municipalities and federal agencies, and at Petawawa responsible for the day-to-day operations, delivery of major capital projects, waste management, strategic asset management planning, and GIS solutions. So thanks, Dave, for joining us. We've got Emily Zegers, a senior engineer in Toronto Water's Process, Innovation, and Energy Group, with a focus on instrumentation and data management, process optimization, water reuse, and GHG emissions. Thank you, Emily, for joining us as well. We've got Frank Frigo, who works with the City of Calgary's Watershed Analysis Group and has driven flood mitigation, river flood preparedness planning and response, water supply, watershed management, drainage infrastructure, and river morphology programs. So thank you, Frank, for joining us. And we've got Marie Taponat joining us, a senior project engineer at Metro Vancouver, working in their collaborative innovation group in policy planning and analysis to support technological and business innovations for wastewater treatment. So really a range of perspectives here on the watershed side, on the water and wastewater utility side. So thank you all. And I'm going to hand it over to Dave perhaps first to speak a little bit to your background, your organization, and then any water wastewater projects that your organization is currently working on. And I am going to stop my screen share so we can see you.
Thanks, Alan, for that introduction. So I think I'm I know I am the small person on this block or on this panel. So town of Petawawa, we've got a population of approximately 17,500, located just a couple hours west of Ottawa. So it gives you an idea. Combination of rural and urban. So a portion of our town is serviced by water and wastewater, and then some are on private well and septic. So we have a water treatment plant, rated capacity of around 21,500 cubic meters per day, and our wastewater treatment plant is rated at 8,730 cubic meters per day. The big project that we have on the books right now is a net zero project that we're proposing at our wastewater treatment facility. And so that would bring in a food waste slurry externally and co-digest it in our anaerobic digesters. And then phase 0 of this project would see electricity being produced. But our phase 2 of the project would see additional food waste slurry brought in, and then the production of renewable natural gas. So that's our big project that we have on the books right now. We're just going through the regulatory approvals, and we're at around 30% design stage. And so hopefully within the next month or two, then we'll get full approval from council to proceed further. And I think I'll just leave it at that for the introduction, and then the questions will answer some of the other items.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave, for that introduction. And Marie, we'll hand it over to you next. And Marie, you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you for the introduction, Alan. Metro Vancouver is a federation of 21 municipalities, 1 electoral area, 1 Treaty First Nation, and we plan for and deliver regional scale services ranging from drinking water, wastewater treatment, and solid waste management plan. And the region right now is about 2.8 million people, and we're projected to rise to 3.8 million by 2050. So some of the projects that we're working on, I work on the liquid waste services side, but basically we have lots of big projects coming up, lots of upgrades and new secondary treatment plant that we need to implement for tightening regulations and growing populations. So some large projects at the Iona Island wastewater treatment plant, a project that's planned for the 2030s. We've got currently we're building a new secondary plant on the North Shore as well, and we've got also a major upgrade at the Northwest Langley plant. So on the liquid waste side, we've got some significant, expensive projects coming up in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's one of the main focus, as well as aging collection infrastructure. And that kind of sums up the kind of big projects we have. And so to try to improve the sustainability of those projects, we're trying to implement innovation as much as possible and see what we can do.
Thanks, Marie. And which of the plants is in your background?
So I've been working at Metro for 14 years, and currently in collaborative innovations, we're looking mostly towards the Iona wastewater treatment plant, because the North Shore one, or the design is set already, so obviously we're not going to be making any changes there. But Iona is the one that we can still shape because it's entering the preliminary design phase, and we need to plan it for the future so that it's a plant that's going to last for the next 100 years, and we need to make sure that it can handle the capacity, it can handle climate change, and it's flexible so that we can implement new technologies as they come at that facility.
Thanks, Marie. I remember doing groundwater sampling at that facility in a past life, so really nice to see it in your background too. Let's hand it over to Frank Frigo to speak to the City of Calgary's perspective.
Good morning, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Frank Frigo. I am the leader of what's called watershed analysis within the water utility. I've been with the City of Calgary for about 14 years, working on all 3 lines of service: potable water collection and distribution, wastewater collection and treatment, as well as storm drainage and river-related aspects. If you're not familiar with the City of Calgary, it is about 1.1, 1.2 million direct residents, and then our water utility also service a number of neighboring communities. That means we have a total customer base in the order of 1.4 million people, and that means about 1 of every 4 Albertans is relying on the water services of the City of Calgary. Innovation technology are very, very important to us, and we definitely have innovations working in all 3 of the lines of service. In particular, we sometimes refer to ourselves as a big city on a relatively small river. Our interaction with the Bow Basin is very significant, and the Bow Basin is one in which new licenses have been closed for. And so the issue of growth and development, issues of climate change are very important to where we're going in terms of managing the hydrologic extremes at both ends of the spectrum, both drought and flood. And so this has been a big component of the drivers behind a lot of our drive to innovate. Hopefully I have a chance to elaborate on that a little bit more as we speak.
Thanks, Frank. And last but not least for our introductions, at least, Emily, go ahead.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, Emily Zegers. I'm a senior engineer in Toronto Water at City of Toronto. And Toronto Water takes care of drinking water treatment and supply, as well as wastewater collection and treatment and stormwater management for the City of Toronto. Structurally, Toronto Water is like a division that's administered underneath City of Toronto, but our budget is 100% rate supported. So all of the expenditures of Toronto Water are coming out of water bills. And what else was I going to say? We have 4 wastewater facilities, 4 drinking water plants. And in terms of projects that we have underway, we tend to talk about the capital projects because the capital spending keeps going up every year. And I think we're at 1.4 billion this year that's being spent on capital. So that's there's major upgrades. Sorry, can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes, we could.
There's there's like significant upgrades going on at all the wastewater facilities, most notably at our biggest plant, Ashbridges Bay. There's an effluent UV disinfection facility going in, as well as an enormous influent pumping station, and then we have a new incinerator being built at one of our plants. Aeration system upgrades are happening everywhere. Administration buildings. There's a lot of stuff happening, and a lot of money going to wastewater, stormwater treatment as well. We have some very large capital projects going underway to build tunnels for CSO capture and treatment. And in the drinking water facilities, a bit less money being spent, but there's UV being built at those as well, or planned. And we have a big solar array and battery storage facility going in at our island treatment plant. So my team does do some capital support, but we focus more on the operations. So operations optimization, but my current projects sort of don't fall into the water or wastewater category. So I've been rolling out a new data management platform for Toronto Water for the last couple of years. And then also I have another of my big projects is looking at greenhouse gas emissions, greenhouse gas mitigation. And then finally, I'm leading a team that's building an on-site reuse framework for Toronto. So that's going to allow buildings to have on-site treatment and reuse. So yeah, I'll stop talking there.
Thanks, Emily. And I know at least a couple of the companies in the room today are doing data applications, so I think they'll be interested in connecting as well. So I love the 4 different perspectives here, and I think that'll set us up really nicely for this next question around water challenges that your organization is currently facing, recognizing that for some, you're part of fairly large organizations, so feel free to speak to what your team is working on, in particular challenges that you have facing you today. So maybe we'll switch up the order slightly. Marie, if you want to start us off.
Sorry, you kind of broke out here for a minute. Do you mind repeating the questions?
Yes, of course. Just asking, what are some of the key water challenges that your organization is facing at present and looking ahead?
Okay, sorry. Okay, so to speak about the wastewater side, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. So the region is growing, liquid waste will grow with it, of course. And we have, as I said before, large, very expensive wastewater treatment plant upgrades that are planned to meet this growing population and the tightening regulations. So environmental sustainability, better recovery of resources within the liquid waste, they're also focused to move towards that more circular economy. So, and at the same time, we need to ensure that financial stability and resiliency in the face of climate change for this new infrastructure. So, as this past year and the past few days have shown in BC, resiliency is going to be a key issue. So it's becoming more urgent, and we need to be faster at innovating and implementing innovation, and that's one major challenge in itself. That cycle is currently very slow because we lack infrastructure to easily pilot and demonstrate new technologies.
Thanks, Marie. I appreciate you flagging that both on the technical side, but of course on the innovation itself being a challenge. Frank, do you want to pick it up from there?
Certainly, Alan. I would say what I touched on when we did the quick introductions was that climate change is a pretty significant driver in our region. And again, we are a city that sits on two, at the confluence of two mountain rivers. The change in hydrology in those rivers are our water supply. They are the place where we return our treated wastewater effluent to, and they're quite sensitive and changing. And that's important to understand. That's become a huge driver. I would also indicate that our customer expectations are really changing, and they continue to evolve over the years. The customer's expectation around environmental performance, around transparency of billing, so this relates to everything from data management platforms to the information that they can dig through and understand their billing. Like others, the City of Calgary's water services are completely rate supported, and so it is very important to understand our interaction with our customers. And thirdly, I would say that asset management. We are a city that has grown rather rapidly. We do have an increasing base, in the multi-billions of dollars worth of total assets, and managing those assets in a life cycle manner, especially recognizing the changing dynamics with changing climate, changing customer base, ever evolving political and economic situation. Asset management has become more and more of a focus. And part of that is just the sheer growth of the amount, nature, and distribution of the type of infrastructure we have and the variegation of that infrastructure. One case is we really have been trying to drive toward green stormwater initiatives. That has led to a number of water reuse types of initiatives, but this is a new asset class that a lot of our traditional processes and operations have not yet fully grown to fully accommodate. And so I would say, yeah, climate change, a changing customer base, and asset management are three pretty big ones for us.
Thanks, Frank, for outlining that so succinctly. Emily, we'll hand it over to you.
I'll talk about maybe the ones that haven't already been addressed, but because I think we all face some similar challenges. But in Toronto, combined sewer overflows and basement flooding, I think, are a major focus, and because they directly impact residents visibly, that's definitely one of the key areas of where Toronto Water is trying to ramp up and address issues faster. And then cybersecurity is a huge focus right now as well. But I guess maybe just to talk about digital transformation overall, I think it's been sort of a bumpy road for us. We've introduced new digital solutions that have bombed or have not gone too well in the past. And so I think as an organization, we're maturing and we're figuring out how to avoid the pitfalls to avoid and the way to do things successfully. But that's been a bit of a journey and that we're still on. And I have a lot of conversations with other utilities about that as well. And I think we're all sort of figuring that out. And then maybe this is I think in Toronto, we also struggle a little bit with just the pace of development and intensification, which I guess links back to the strain on our sewer systems as well. But just keeping up with development approvals and trying to provide infrastructure for all this development that's going at an extraordinary pace, and intensifying on top of our existing infrastructure that's in really congested areas downtown. That's a challenge as well.
You're muted, Alan.
Oh no, but my hand gestures show that I was actually talking. So Dave, go ahead and wrap us up for this question.
I'm glad it's not me that it only makes that mistake. So I'm going to take a little twist on this. So for us, I find that the biggest challenge is on the resources, human resources. And, so we contract out our operations of our water and wastewater facilities, collection, distribution, to Ontario Clean Water Agency. And, so for me, it's I'm subcontracting it out. So, they're to provide the service. However, I know within their, their makeup of their the resources, you're going to have I know the two top people probably retired in the next 3 years, and some of their key operators will be retiring. So it's that knowledge transfer, but then also is that new workforce that is coming up. They will be more, I guess, accepting of innovation. And so I think that's the challenge right now is the acceptance of the innovation. And I found that with our net zero project, you can put all the technical ideas and drivers in front of the decision makers, but it really becomes a change management aspect of it. So for any new technology coming in, it's not just introducing the new technology, but it's approaching it with a change management aspect of it. So that's kind of the overarching. Specifically, like we have capacity issues at both our plants, and so we'll see upgrades within the next 3 to 5 years. And is there opportunities to optimize those plants or do some work in the collection and distribution so that we can not cancel those upgrades, but maybe push them out. So that's what we're looking at. And then the third, I would say, is metering, and specifically for the water, but also with wastewater. So we meter majority of our commercial, and our large commercial would be the Garrison Petawawa. And then all the town is on fixed rates. So knowing the meters, keeping them working is a challenge for us. And then knowing where the water is going throughout our distribution. So maybe increasing the amount of meters that we do have within the system.
Thanks, Dave. And I appreciate you explicitly highlighting the technological challenges, but also the change management challenges, which comes back to Marie's earlier point about innovation through a change management lens as well, which sets us up really nicely for our next question, which will be the last one for me for a little while. So I see one question in the chat for Emily. Emily, you're welcome to reply to that either in the chat or we'll loop it in after this one. And then anyone else who has questions, feel free to throw those in the chat as well. But the last one that I'll throw out for now is, with both the technology lens and the change management lens, how are technologies fitting into your projects? And then how do you find, screen, and select vendors and technologies, wrapping this back to some of the companies in the room, and obviously interested in how they might be able to work not only with your municipality, but other municipalities. So let's flip that order again, and perhaps Emily, if you want to start us off for this one.
Sure. How does water technology fit into our projects? I guess in lots of different ways. Equipment, sensors, instrumentation. But in terms of major process change types of technologies, yeah, like some technologies fit in once the project is underway, and then other projects might be spurred by a desire to change a technology. So I would say that we've done projects at our wastewater facilities recently that we called process roadmaps, and we were trying to get away from a kind of capital planning where we just went through the plant and said, this is the life left in these processes, and we have to replace this process. Which is historically how we planned our capital upgrades. And then we'd say, okay, aeration needs to be replaced. What are we going to do here? Like, what technologies can we consider? So the process roadmap took a different approach, which was to start by scanning emerging technologies and then look at options for each process area, but then tie them together in plant-wide upgrade schemes, which for wastewater treatment makes more sense because changes that you make in the aeration system will affect digestion, and changes that it all sort of relates. And there's, if you want to do like things that you do with your digester gas are impacted by how you treat your digested sludge, and it all ties together. So we looked at whole plant sort of schemes, and I'd say we had some success with that approach. But what that means is, I think often for the big things, engineering consultants are middle people for us often. So they're proposing new technologies, they're screening, they're suggesting things to us that we then will look at more closely. Although it's happening the other way around too now, the more tapped in we get as utilities, talking to other utilities and attending events and hearing about technologies through LinkedIn and having sort of trusted sources of information, we sometimes will know about something, or we go to a conference, we see a paper, we'll know about something, and then I'll send it to our engineering consultants and say, like, what do you know about this? Are you looking into this? So I think like trade shows, some of my colleagues, when we go to conferences, are spending more time at the trade show and looking at equipment, and I tend to be more like watching the research papers. And so that's one of the ways that we get to know vendors, or that we get to know about new technologies. And then in terms of how vendors are selected, that's sort of tricky as well, because I have done sole sourcing when there was a particular innovation that we really wanted to implement. And it is possible for us to do that, but there's a lot of hoops that we have to jump through, and we have to have a very solid rationale for doing it. And then like all the city's procurement is supposed to be designed around fairness. I think that's the goal, and it's maybe not always achieved in practice. But capital, I guess one sort of source of unfairness is that sometimes in capital contracts, we list 3 acceptable options. And then the contractor, it's low bid from those 3 options. So we've definitely had complaints in the past about how did you come up with those 3 alternatives, and why were we excluded? So I think there's some, it depends on whether it's within a huge capital project or whether it's a small initiative. We can find technologies and procure things for very small projects in more ways. But major technology selection is a big process, and for important equipment, we also do pre-selection for some really important equipment in big contracts. So the equipment is selected not price-based, but it's like a consultant evaluation. It's like 80% technical score. So it kind of depends, I guess. Yeah, so I'll leave it there for now.
Thanks, Emily. Lots of great information there. Dave, do you want to pick up from there?
Sure. So Traditionally for us, we would utilize one consultant to do basically everything within the town. So roads, water, sewer, both in the collection, distribution, and at the plants. And yeah, you tended to get their basically toolbox. And so it was either myself or some of the operators that would go to these conferences, bring back different technologies, and that's how we were kind of getting introduced to new innovations. Now we have Ontario Clean Water Agency doing a lot of our engineering, both at the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. And so they bring a wealth of innovation at the table. And so that's now how we're getting a majority of our different solutions. So, so that's been a switch over the last probably, 7-8 years. So that's how we kind of, find new innovations, kind of stumble on them, either from consultants or, as Emily was saying, at conferences and that. Screening them, yeah, we have the ability to, if it's like a specific solution that's a one-off, then we can do sole sourcing. But as Emily was saying, it's we are a public entity, so that we do have to go through the procurement process. And similar to the Toronto, in one of my previous lives, when we had done an upgrade at the City of Pembroke wastewater treatment plant, we did the same thing, is that we pre-selected all the major equipment, and so it went through a technical process. So and we worked really well. And so what we did was we had the operators and the consultants go around to different plants, talk to the operators, talk to the industry, and then call for proposals. And so then when we went out to do the major construction, all the major items were already selected. And so that really worked well. And so I would certainly recommend that going forward when we do the upgrades at the two plants going forward. Yeah, I think I covered everything.
Great, thanks, Dave. Frank?
At the City of Calgary, we've been pretty deliberate about innovation. So, for instance, at one of our 3 major wastewater treatment plants, we've built a facility that is dedicated to nothing other than actually testing and piloting new technologies. That's an academic partnership that we've undertaken with the University of Calgary. So in addition to all the mechanisms that Emily talked about, there's one example where we've made kind of a direct connection to the academic universe and made a capital commitment and a funding commitment to testing out new technologies and having kind of our own laboratory to make sure that technologies are going to make sense in our climate, for our basin, for our processes, for the types of the particular constituents we have important in our loading. And similarly, I guess with the stormwater facility or stormwater line of service, we've developed something that we call our Drainage Knowledge Fund. And again, it sets aside a particular amount so that there is an understanding year to year of funding that we can direct toward new technologies, innovation. And again, largely there we're leveraging partnerships with academic and other NGO groups to make sure we can test and pilot. One thing I would mention that we've been trying to do is involve more and more industry, the development industry and other industrial customers with our processes to make sure that there's a bit of partnering going on there. We're sharing costs and looking for synergies together. And that sometimes leads to some sticky conversations about who's responsible for what aspects of what funding and operations and consequences. Everything from legal, customer expectations, communications can be bound up in than that. But I would say within the city, there has been, City of Calgary, there have been a number of programs to try and make very deliberate steps toward innovation, whether they're more on the digital side or more on the infrastructure side. And really, it does apply to all three lines of service. But I would say wastewater treatment and drainage perhaps more so than in the potable water treatment, because of the unique conditions of our system and the basins from which we draw our potable source water.
Thanks, Frank. And Marie is the final one for this question.
And I don't have much more to say because everything I wanted to talk about has been said already. I mean, all our approaches are very similar to what I heard Emily talk about, and same kind of large region, large entity. So for technologies that are market ready and already proven, it will go through a regular procurement process as part of construction projects. So it really depends on the stage of development that the technologies are at. For innovation projects, where we are trying to also now be a bit more deliberate about how we approach this. And so one thing is that we try to engage and listen to our O&M staff to identify the pain points, the concerns, the ideas on what could be done better, and identify if other technologies or processes exist that could solve that problem. Because we don't want, what has happened sometimes in the past is that, oh, we come up with this great innovation, and you don't want to try to just push that on our O&M staff, because it's not going to work. It's not the way that innovation is going to be accepted. You need to get them engaged right from the beginning, and they need to be part of the process. And so we also stay informed on new industry development to identify if some new technologies could be of interest. And that's especially the case for new infrastructure that's coming up, and because we can't build the same plant we built 60 years ago. And we have to look to the future. And so as we're trying to be more deliberate, one thing that our board approved a few years back is a sustainability innovation fund. And we can use that funding mechanism to propose some innovation projects that get kind of developed on the side, to try to develop some new ideas, new concepts, pilot some technologies, and so on. So one of the big projects we're looking at right now is funded under that umbrella is hydrothermal liquefaction. And this was a matter of connected the dots at some conferences, and then collaborating with university, industry partners, and some other government entities to try to develop that technology and test it. So.
Thank you so much, Marie. There's a bunch of questions in the chat, which is fantastic. There's a couple that are deep dive questions that I would encourage folks to just connect after today's session for sort of that very granular level of information. There's a couple specific ones, and so I'll throw those out now. Emily, there was a question for you about the use of on-site treatment and release technologies in Toronto, since that's something you mentioned in your comments. And is this only happening in Toronto? Is this happening more broadly?
Okay. It is happening broadly in the world on a worldwide basis. But in Canada, the ones that we know about, actually City of Vancouver has one of the best developed reuse programs in Canada, if not the most. Although it's limited in terms of it's limited to only rainwater as a source, but they have quite a few permitted end uses, I think, for the rainwater. The North American leader would be San Francisco. They have a regulation by law, and they allow all kinds of reuse up to black water treatment. And there's a few other, it's really a patchwork across North America. And I think the reason there's huge barriers to doing it. So speaking as someone who's trying to drive it within our enormous organization, no one wants to be the regulatory authority. We're essentially, because by allowing reuse, you're introducing a new public health risk, because people who are in the buildings where reuse is happening are inherently, they're being exposed to water, which is not of potable water quality. So it's, if to allow it, we have to regulate it, and to regulate it, we have to put our fingers into something that previously we weren't involved with. We have to require reporting. We have to have some provision to go and inspect. What I've been finding is that the easy part has been writing writing all the requirements for what we want treatment to be, and how often sampling should occur for different types of systems, etc. The hard part is figuring out who's gonna, within our organization, is gonna take responsibility, or will do certain tasks and take on risk. And the lawyers are not happy. It's so that I'm going on and on. Sorry, I'll stop. That's why it's not happening in more places, because it's extremely complicated. Just the regulations, the mishmash of local, federal, provincial. We have to work within the provincial building code. But so we're doing what we're doing on a municipal level, and there's no like national sort of collaboration mechanism right now. The States has a very good one happening called the US Blue Ribbon Commission, and we're participating in that, as is Vancouver, and I think Calgary as well. But we don't have like a Canadian umbrella that's helping to create like sample bylaws that municipal utilities can use.
So in the interests of time, I would encourage folks to take those other questions into our breakout sessions, since that is our informal discussion time, which is starting now, just so everyone has a chance to continue those conversations. I'm going to share my screen for just a second. And actually, before I do that, I really want to thank our panelists for this portion of the discussion. I know I had a couple other questions that we didn't squeeze in, and there's a couple others in the chat. But of course, this is just the beginning of some of these conversations. So I really hope that these will continue for the second half of this event and then after today's session. But thank you so much for the panelists for sharing your experience today. And I'd like to introduce one other moderator that we have joining us for the second half, which is Christina Cholcan, Senior Project Manager of Water and Wastewater Planning from the City of Hamilton, who has kindly agreed to moderate one of our 3 breakout rooms. So let me just share quickly the instructions for the second half here. So for this matchmaking session, our format is we've got 3 breakout rooms. I'll be moderating one with a couple of utilities in the room as well. Rahim from OWC will be moderating another with a couple of utilities, and we'll have Christina moderating the 3rd. As companies, you have the ability to jump between breakout rooms, so don't feel guilty if you're leaving mid-conversation. Of course, you want to talk to as many people as you can, and that's totally reasonable. So you can see on the bottom right-hand side of your window, you should have the option to join a breakout room, and you will be able to jump around in between sessions. For utilities and any folks who are here from OWC and IRAP, we encourage you to stay put in the room where we place you, and that makes it a little bit easier for our companies to navigate. When we kick these off, I would encourage all the moderators to just start off by letting the SMEs introduce themselves, because not everyone has had a chance to chime in the chat. And then from there is absolutely no strings attached to where the discussion goes, so some of those questions that have already come up in the chat are a great place to kick that off. Before we jump in, I know we have Ching here from IRAP. Ching, do you want to send us into the session with a few wise words?
Thank you, Alan, for organizing this session, and thank you for our panelists to talk about your challenges and your technical needs. So I don't want to talk about IRAP. Everyone knows about IRAP. I just want to talk about our support for the water sector. I'm very pleased the WaterNEXT, this new platform, national platform, is set up for water SMEs to connect with the entire water ecosystem. So a few particular things I want to emphasize. Number one, so I'm very happy to hear there's piloting demonstration opportunities and funds available from utility utility colleagues. So at IRAP, we also have funding that SMEs can tap into to do demonstration or field piloting to prove your technologies. So that's, we have a BC fast pilot in particular, but across the country, the general IRAP R&D funding can be used for supporting the pilot and demonstration stage in the field. So that's number one I want to say. Number two, we also have a funding we created called Fast Pilot in international markets, Fast Pilot for foreign markets. So when your technology is mature enough and you are ready, you can take advantage of this fund that we make a call every year. So you can use to break out into the international markets. So thirdly, I want to say that through the WaterNEXT and Foresight and its partners, we are determined to continue to support the SME technology development in the water sector. We've been doing this for the past 6 years, and we want to continue to make sure this platform is very, very solid. It's serving the needs of our communities and our innovation industry and our SMEs. So that's all I want to say. Yeah, we're here to support you. We'll work very hard with our partners, with utilities, and with WaterNEXT to continue to support you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ching, and we are, as always, very grateful to have your support for this event, for our broader matchmaking program, and for our strategic SME support program that will be kicking off shortly. With that, Lee, do you want to send us into our breakout rooms for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll bring it back at 25 after the hour to wrap up?
I think I just kicked myself out of my own breakout room there.
Oh, is that what happened? We thought you got
that big red button was too tempting.
Yeah,
I was trying to hit something.
I did the same thing.
I was trying to hit something to stay, but it suddenly closed me out.
Well, I think we were going to get booted out within a few seconds anyway.
I don't know if the other rooms were anything like ours, but that was down to the wire, snuck in a couple last questions. Really enjoyed that discussion. So.
Yeah, I mean, Emily was mid-sentence and then she disappeared.
I was just, if you guys are all here, like all I was saying was that even as a technology provider, if you have a conference that like at Water Environment Association of Ontario, for example, if you have real data from a case study that you can present at a conference, that's a good way to get yourself in front of a captive audience of municipal utility people who are already there, and their time is already spoken for. So I was just advocating that that's another approach.
Everyone is back here now. We've got 1 minute to wrap up, so I just want to throw a huge thank you out to each of our panelists today. I want to throw a huge thank you out for Christina for moderating, and Rahim for moderating our breakout rooms, for Rahim, OWC, and IRAP, Ching, for supporting this event. And inevitably, some version of these events are things that we would love to continue doing, creating these rooms where we can get some FaceTime, get some of those heart-to-heart chats in. So a reminder that after this event, tomorrow we will be sending out an event recording. We will also be sending out an event survey and would love to get some of your feedback. And then we will be sending out the participant list just to attendees of this session. So we do like to keep that closed off. Any of the event partners, Rahim or Ching, do you want to wrap us up at all? Any closing?
Thanks everyone for participating. Again, just open invitation if you want to connect afterwards. Please feel free to send an email.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much, and looking forward to having conversations with you probably in the new year at this point as we start to wind down for the holidays. Really nice to meet you all.